So what I'm trying to do today is the most kind of real world scientific comparison between different tire pressures and like what the optimal tire pressure is for you know, a given surface in the real world. So of course a higher tire pressure will be better on like a velodrome or you know, the scientific testing that's done on like perfect rolling surfaces. But I wanted to see like what's the optimal tire pressure for someone riding on like normal pavement in a group ride or in a crit or something. So yeah, of course, higher tire pressures feel a lot faster, but the reality is higher pressure isn't always better. So I've seen a lot of these tests done on YouTube, and normally it's just like GCN has done a few where they just do one run with low pressure, one with medium, one with high. And it strikes me as very unscientific because of course conditions change, your body weight changes as you're riding, you know, air temperature, density of air, everything changes. So it's hard to really draw real conclusions from that. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to do 3 runs at each pressure, and I'm going to do them at different times. So I'll do, you know, lowest pressure, highest pressure, and then middle pressure, and we'll see what we get, you know, what data we get from there. I'm going to keep the same position on the hoods, you know, same body weight, same kit, same bike, same cadence, everything. I'm going to hold 110 watts for each run, which is a time segment with Strava. And the reason I'm doing just 110 watts, I mean, first of all, it's a recovery day, so I shouldn't be doing anything more than that either, like, you know, regardless. But at a low speed, the major force you're having to overcome is rolling resistance and not so much wind resistance. So if you know, you think, oh, this is a low speed test, this won't really be applicable for me, you know, when I'm in a crit or you know, bombing down a hill or something, the major force you're having to overcome at these speeds will be rolling resistance. So it makes sense to, you know, it makes sense that we're testing rolling resistance. Why not have that be the main factor that's influencing speed? So I'm going to do 3 runs at 30 psi, 3 runs at 60, 3 runs at 80, and then 3 runs at 120. And I'm going to kind of I'm going to do the I'm going to do some of the low pressure ones in the beginning and some of the low pressure ones at the end, and vice versa with the high pressure ones, just because I want to correct for changes in temperature, changes in you know, wind resistance. I'm going to try to make the test as kind of like randomized and scientific as possible. So as you can see, this is a paved road, very real world, lots of leaves, but you know, relatively smooth. Okay, so I'm done with all the riding. I did 3 runs at 30 psi, 3 runs at 60, 3 runs at 80, 3 runs at 120, and I spaced them out. So I did the 30 psi first, the 80 psi second, the 60 third, and the 120 fourth. You know, if we're noticing a trend in terms of times, that trend is most likely associated with the pressure and not some other variable that's changing over time. So I have the results here. The fastest time was 80 psi with 308, and the slowest time was 30 psi with 312.9. So I made a little, you know, chart here. So I kept right around, I was shooting for 110, but I ended up a little bit lower. I kept around 107 to, looks like, yeah, 106, 107, 108 watts. 30 psi, 312.9, 60 psi, 311.6, 80 psi, 308.8, and 120 was 311.3. The difference, so in order of speed, 80, 120, 60, 30. So the optimal PSI in terms of the ones that were tested here is 80 PSI. One thing that surprised me, I guess, was 120 was the second fastest. I thought that would be like, you know, one of the slowest. But so the difference between the slowest and the fastest was 4.1 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but extended to an hour, that's 1 minute and 15 seconds. In hindsight, I think this could have been done a bit better with a more, at least like a flatter segment, because this segment, my power was kind of jumping up and down, and then I know changes in, grade and the power you're doing at that grade can also influence time. So I think if I revisit this, I'm going to do a longer segment that's a bit flatter and probably with the same kind of terrain. So again, the time differences don't seem like a lot, but extended over an hour, 1 minute and 15 seconds, like, if a person's a minute in front of you, they're very far ahead. So the takeaway from this for me is you don't need to get super granular about what your tire pressure is, as long as it's not like comically high or comically low. Like 120 is clearly too high, and 30 is clearly too low for, normal circumstances. So, around the 60 to 100 range seems somewhat optimal for most circumstances. So for people who are getting like super granular about like what, precise PSI is right for them, in my circumstance with my tires, my, latex inner tubes, I guess that has some factor also. I should mention my inner tubes are latex. 60, 80 is right around optimal. And also, according to this, 120 would be, but it was super uncomfortable, and I think I would need to do a few more runs at 120 to really get better results. But again, the differences between 60, 80, and 120 were very small. So a comfortable pressure between 60 and 120 will be close to optimal. Just in the regular, real world group rides, races, stuff like that.